Hello, everyone, and welcome to Futsal News. Jake here, and we've got a special guest with us today, and it's coming all the way over from Northern Ireland. Darius, welcome to the stream, man. Good to
No,
have
thank
you.
you so much for having me. Thank you for having me, Jake. It's a pleasure to be here to talk everything futsal, especially in Northern Ireland.
Absolutely, and there's plenty to talk about for you guys. There's a lot of moving pieces, but before we get too far into it, a couple house cleaning items here. You guys may notice I'm solo today. Don't worry, Luke will be back, and we'll be back to regular quality streams. But the second string's Inte, that's me. So until then, I'm welcome you guys to sound off in the chat. We're going to be having a conversation about a number of things: Northern Ireland futsal, the future Champions League contest that's coming up here at the end of the month, and Darius's involvement there. So if you have any questions as we go along, this is your guys' chance to steer the interview. So don't forget to chime out in the comments, leave a like, and share with your friends so everyone knows about the journey that Darius is about to take on with this team. So, Darius, if you don't mind just starting off introducing yourself and give us a little background about yourself.
Yeah, so as I said, thank you for having me. My name's Darius Roohi. I'm from Northern Ireland, Belfast, and I currently play for Sparta Belfast Futsal Club. My journey with futsal started at about 2017-18 when I had started playing for Sparta. I had played in Northern Ireland then for the full year and won the league with Sparta. I went to the Champions League the following season, at the beginning of the following season. I then moved to Spain for a year on my placement year with university, actually. And because had loved futsal so much, I continued it. And I also received international caps at that point. So I'd been a capped senior international for Northern Ireland at the start of my journey, very, very early. So I continued on in Spain, played there for a year just before COVID hit, and then returned back to Northern Ireland for nearly 2 years, a year without playing nearly for everyone, and then 1 year of playing with Sparta again. We won the league again, and we went to the Champions League again in that season. But at the end of that season, I knew I was going to be moving away again for studies again to England. So I signed at Loughborough University for the year and had a successful season there with an amazing manager, an amazing group of players, and enjoyed my year. After my studies were completed, it was always the plan to come home again for a third time and to play for Sparta again. And we have since then, since I've returned, we've won the treble as a team, which is the first time that's ever happened in Northern Irish futsal in its short history. So that's a bit of background in terms of my personal futsal experiences right now. I've got 21 caps for Northern Ireland. Not so many goals, which a lot of people seem to talk about, but I'm hoping to improve upon that in the near future. But yes, still developing. I'm still young. I'm only 24, so still got a lot to learn, and I want to learn every day.
That is a hell of a resume for a 24-year-old. That's incredible.
Thanks.
What's a day in the life for you in that scenario? Then coming fresh out of university and you've gone through a couple different phases of your personal life through your futsal journey.
Yep.
Can you talk a little bit about that and how it's impacted the day-to-day life and what it's like to be a futsaler?
Yeah. So when I first started with Sparta, I was only a first year university student. So there was a lot of time spent with studying and also playing at the same time. I also had a part-time job at that time because when you play in our league, the Northern Ireland Futsal Federation, it's not a professional league, it's an amateur league. So of course the players also need to work as well. I'm no different. So when I started with Sparta, that was the case. A lot of studying, a lot of playing combined, and then a part-time job. Once I moved to Spain, on my placement year, I was actually as a teacher on placement. And the school that I was working in Spain was a massive futsal school. They really incorporated futsal in their day-to-day life. So when they knew that I played and played at a good level, they were delighted, and so was I. So I had the combination of working full time, but also playing a lot more when I was in Spain, because of the cultural difference of what it is with Northern Ireland. Then when I moved to England at Loughborough, I was so lucky because the university is renowned for its sport and its high level performance teams, and futsal's no different there. The manager was João Media, amazing manager, I learned a lot from him in that year. He's now the manager at Lebanon futsal national team. So it speaks volumes for his knowledge of the sport. And the way we trained at Loughborough was, yes, we were all students at the time, but we trained a lot because we had access to facilities and we had access to an amazing manager. So we trained 3 nights a week, but we also had performance analysis in there. We also had nutrition. We also had physical preparation, and then we also had a match at the weekend. And in England, that was covered live on BT Sport, which is now TNT Sports. It's a big broadcasting company. And that was amazing for me, the exposure, to have family and friends able to watch me on TV. And if it wasn't on TV, it was on YouTube live. So the exposure was amazing for futsal. And the day-to-day life, I was also on, I was on a placements as such, where I was a trainee teacher. So I had to teach during the day, usually long hours, and then return and go to training that night. There was long hours in the day, a lot of working and not very much sleeping, but it was worth it that whole year. But now I've returned to Northern Ireland and I'm in full-time employment. I work at the Irish FA, so I get to see how futsal was incorporated within the Irish FA and is incorporated within the Irish FA. But I also get to play a lot with my club as well. So I've got a fine balance between work and play.
That's awesome. It probably doesn't feel so much like work in those scenarios either when it's something you love like that, I would imagine.
No, absolutely not. Especially when it's a career path that I wanted to do since I was young. So being able to, within my job within the Irish FA, to educate young players and young people and to make them fall in love with sport in loads of different ways is a pleasure for me. I don't see it as work. And then getting to go and play the sport that I love in the evening time so much, I'm so thankful and I'm lucky.
Well, let's talk about that real quick. You mentioned, touching the up and coming, whether it be the impact on youth or even other
Mhm.
amateurs. About as far as the sport's concerned and your involvement in all the different places and more or less positions you've been in, not only on the court but off the court.
Mhm.
What do you get the most back from? Like, what really fills your heart and your soul the most from that? Is it training the kids, or is it out there playing yourself, or where do you get the most return on your investment?
Well, because I'm so young, I really like to think of myself as a player still. But because I've had so many different experiences abroad and in this country, and with the national team and playing in European competitions and world competitions, um, I like to be able to give a little bit back even at my young age. And that's why I've been so heavily involved within the Sparta youth program that we have for kids that are playing age between their 2010, so they might be 12, 13, right down to really, really young players at 2015, 16 level, where they're only 6 and 7 year old. So to have them sessions on a regular basis, we used to do it on a weekly basis just before summer. It ran throughout the whole year, the whole academic year, usually. And to have those experiences for the kids, which I didn't have when I was growing up in a sport that I love, is amazing. And we need to be providing those opportunities on a more regular basis because it's the only way to get kids involved. They're not going to know about it unless it's there. They can't be it unless they can see it, essentially. So if it's me at a young age providing those opportunities, I don't mind. But I'm not going to be able to do it all by myself. There needs to be a lot of people, a lot more people involved in supporting that, whether that be within my club or within other clubs within our league or different people within our country that want to take a lead on that. Everyone needs to be doing their bit to provide our youngsters with exposure to the sport. And I'm glad to see that it has grown over the past 5, 6 years from when I first started getting involved in it more. It definitely has grown, but there's definitely a lot more room for more growth, which is exciting as well.
What So you mentioned that. How did you find futsal, and
Mhm.
how does that compare to now, where the kids you're seeing and meeting now? How are they finding it compared to maybe how you did when you were younger?
Yeah, so in 2015-16, I entered a competition in Northern Ireland, and it was actually a global competition called Neymar Juniors 5, which is a five-a-side competition. I entered within the Northern Irish format. There was all different countries across the world entered this within their own nation, and the winner within your nation got to go to the World Finals in Brazil, Neymar's official competition in Santos. So I was fortunate enough to win with my team of 5 players, the Northern Irish section, and we got to go to Brazil. This was 2015-16. And we went. The first time we went, we were really, really competitive. And we noticed just how intense the opposition was across the world, especially the South American players, the Portuguese players even as well, how intense they were, how good their movement was, their knowledge of a small-sided format. So that whole experience was amazing. We came back and we re-entered again the next year. And luckily we won again the next year. And we returned. And I went with some different people from the previous year as well. But 4 or 5 that were the same from the previous year. So we went back again for another experience, thankfully to Brazil again. And the second time we went, it was me and a friend called Connor Kernahan, who also plays futsal now as well. We were just sat back watching one of the games, and the way in which the players were controlling the ball, their technique, their movement, the way that they moved around. It wasn't a court, it was an outdoor facility, but the way that they moved around that surface, we were just in awe because we knew that they were so organized, and everything they were doing was with a purpose. And we knew straight away. We're just that was their futsal experience. It was amazing. And us two both being footballers at the time as well, we didn't have that at all. We didn't have that capacity. So it was amazing to learn from those players at that time without even playing the sport of futsal at that point. Because the players that we were playing with, we weren't playing futsal. We were playing something completely different. But the others were playing futsal. So to have that opportunity to learn from the best players at that time in that format was amazing. And at that point, we knew we needed to get involved in futsal. We fell in love with it. So I did. As soon as I returned home, I signed for my local club, which was Sparta Belfast, who had contacted me a few times before to come and trial for that time at an under-19s team that they were trying to run. I was only 18 at the time. And they also had an aim to produce those players to go towards the under-19 national team. So it really interested me. So I signed straight away as soon as I come back.
So you really had a trial by fire to kind of find futsal then. It didn't,
Yeah.
It found you almost slapping you across the head and throwing you right in.
a big slap across the head, a big learning curve, but one that I would never take back. It was an amazing way to learn from amazing players. So I would never take that experience away.
That's incredible. What a story.
Mm-hmm.
Is that something you share with the kids? Give them a little motivation and.
No, I don't think I've ever told the kids within our program that I entered that competition, but everyone within our club would know that I've played in that competition. Even some people that I've played against in that competition, they still recall that my team won it because we won it 2 years in a row, which was crazy. The first year we were very lucky to win it. The second year we weren't. We were the best team. But I remember the first year we won, like we couldn't believe that we'd won either. so yeah, the second year was a bonus, a complete bonus. So memories that are there for life for me.
That's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to shift gears a little bit, but let's focus more on Northern Ireland itself and in the scene there and your involvement. You've seen a lot of changes, I believe, in your time as a player, correct?
Yeah, definitely. I have.
Can you talk a little bit about that? How the landscape for futsal has changed as far as the domestic league's concerned?
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, after I come back from Brazil, I entered the league with Sparta as a registered player. And that was my first proper year's experience of senior futsal. I was still only 18 at the time, but I went straight into the senior team. There was because the sport was growing at that point, and it still is, mind you. There was no such thing as an underage futsal team. So I entered with Sparta, the senior team. And at that point, there were loads of different teams. I think there was 13 or 14 teams in the league. Some stronger than others, of course. But at that time, Sparta had never won the league. In the previous 2 years that they played, they'd won one cup, which they'd won, and I went to watch it. I went to watch their final, and they won the final. They won it pretty convincingly, actually. But they hadn't won the league. I think their best placed at that time was third. So they knew that there was going to be 2 teams there that were going to be very, very competitive, and all the other teams below them were strengthening as well as futsal become more exposed to the wider public. So I remember my first couple of training sessions and couple of games. It was, of course, learning from my manager, who is coincidentally called Darius at the time. He was called Darius as well. So I was learning from him a lot at that point. And the sport was very much developing. We had a big squad at that point as well, but nobody had futsal experience. It was only one or two players that had good experience, and then the only other players in the league that had experience were those that were in the national team at that point. And the national team had only started the year before as well. So even those players didn't have vast experience. It was only because the national team was started and they were selected. Some players had went the previous year with their club to the Champions League as well, which would have been the first time anyone went to the Champions League from Northern Ireland. So those are the players that had the most experience within the league, were those that had went away with the national team or had went to the Champions League with their club. The rest of the league had no experience. It was just learn as you go, essentially. But now I look to the league now, and there's been 3 or 4 different winners of the title since I've been around, since I've known Northern Irish futsal. There's been different title winners. There's been a lot more people that have had opportunities to go and play in the Champions League. There's been a lot more people that have had opportunities to play with the national team. Coaches that have been in the league for 5-6 years now have got more experience in coaching, and their teams are now training more regularly. At that point, teams weren't training regularly, but now teams are, because they know that there's a big prize at the end of the year if they're able to put together a successful season. Players are becoming more and more committed. I can see that. I can speak from that from my behalf at my club at Sparta. Talking about I'm sure we'll talk about it a bit later, the Champions League preparations. But the players, their commitment throughout this 5-6 weeks of pre-season, way before our league actually starts, the time that they're sacrificing to be at training is amazing. And that wouldn't have happened 5 or 6 years ago, because the way Northern Irish futsal was viewed at that point, it was viewed as 5-a-side, and that was it. And if you won the league, then amazing, you got to go on a free holiday. But now, even that total emphasis within our club, that's not the mindset at all. Well, certainly not from me, and I can speak from my club's behalf. That's not the mindset. So it's a mindset shift, but also since that point, if you're talking about structure within the league, some teams have come and they've left, and then some teams have stayed there throughout the whole time. Sparta is one of those teams that have been there throughout that whole time, and has grown a lot, even with spells where players have left and come back. Like myself, I've left and come back, and other players have left and come back as well. But the club has always remained. The league has now become its own sort of separate entity, where it's run by the Northern Irish Futsal Federation. Before, in the past, the Irish FA had more of a stakehold in the league, and they ran the competitions and they provided a lot for the league. But now it's its own separate entity, so futsal is becoming one of its own, essentially, and is growing within itself. And that's thanks to the people that actually really care about futsal within Northern Ireland, that are really trying to push it on independently. And that's a massive change from what it was 5 or 6 years ago, where it was growing, and those people 5 or 6 years ago were only starting out, but now those people have 5 or 6 years experience within the league, and they're starting to run the league themselves. So many changes, many changes, but the ones that I mentioned are the most important in my opinion.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but that transition to it being really run by the folks that are in futsal just happened last season, correct? When it was rebranded as NIFF? Yes,
it was rebranded as NIF, Northern Irish Futsal Federation. And yes, that started last season. And of course, when anything goes like that and it's complete rebrand and a restructure, there is going to be teething problems, of course. That's always going to happen. But I think all in all, there were many positives that come out of that. And a lot of people put in a lot of hard work throughout the year, independently as well, and not only thinking about themselves and their own clubs, and because that would be very easy to do, to be selfish. But I think a lot of people put in a lot of hard work from the clubs and independently to make the league and the year of futsal run as best as possible, which I'm really, really proud about, actually.
Well, that's something that Luke and I talk about often on the channel when we follow just our leagues here in America, is that even though you're different clubs and there's certainly a rivalry on the court, a rising tide raises all ships. So it makes sense to be partners off the court behind the scenes and make sure that everyone is successful. Otherwise, you're standing out there on your own, even if it's just your own club.
Yeah, no, absolutely. and that's starting to become more of a theme within Northern Irish futsal because more and more people are becoming involved. It's important that we start to support each other, whether that be with simple advice off the court. If someone asks you a question, a futsal related question, technical, that you provide the best information that you know, whether that is liaison on the court to try and make it a fair competition. Of course, when you're on the court, you want to win, but you want to win fairly, fair and square, which we believe at Sparta is the best way to win. Of course, we always try our best, but we know our limitations, of course, on and off the court. But we always try our best to win and win fairly. So having those relationships with all the clubs, where it is competitive but in the right way, is important to us.
Oh, makes a ton of sense. And then it's going to keep you sharp for these bigger competitions like what you have coming up at the end of this month, I'm sure, as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. As you mentioned, our club is qualified for the UEFA Champions League. The way you do that within Northern Ireland has changed. Another change that's happened in the past, comparison to the past, where in the past, if you won the league, finished first, you went straight to the Champions League, and the league format was a bit shorter. It was just one time round or twice around, and then whoever finished on top, and you went. And then it changed in the past as well to if they had goal difference involved in the past, but then they took away goal difference because when it was developing, then teams were just trying to hit other teams for 20, 30 goals for goal difference purposes, and there was no futsal being played. It was just who can outscore the other team. Then the league, to be fair, they recognised that after the first season. The first season was won on goal difference. Not the year I was involved. The next year they had it if it was level on points. Then they went to a playoff, and that did actually happen with the top two teams, which is ourselves and Belfast United, who would be classified as rivals because of the city that we play in. We finished level on points. We had more goal difference, but first and second then played a playoff to decide who went to the Champions League, and we won, so we went to the Champions League. Then it changed again, where which was last season, everyone played each other once, and then the top 8 played a playoff, first against 8th, second against 7th, third against 6th, fourth against 5th, and over 2 legs. Then whoever won that went to that was the quarterfinal. Whoever won that went to the semis. And whoever won that over 2 legs again went to the final. And if you won the final, then you went to the Champions League. So it didn't matter necessarily where you finished in the league campaign. The only benefit that gave you was your positioning of who you would face in the quarterfinals. So you wanted to finish as high up, obviously, but that only gave you like a token gesture trophy that we won, which was part of our treble, which was the league winner. But the league winner didn't go to the Champions League. It was the playoff winner. Then we had to win the playoffs, which we did successfully in a really, really tight final and a really good final. One of the best NIF games that I've played in, actually. Probably the best NIF game. It's live on the NI Futsal Federation. It was live on the NI Futsal Federation page. People can go back and watch it if they want to watch the highlights of that game or even the full game. It's there. It was a really, really competitive game. We won 4-3. But then that granted us past the Champions League, essentially. But then we had the cup competition to play at the end of the season as well, which we won to make up the treble. But it just shows you how the evolution of futsal within Northern Ireland, how it's changed. The formats have changed so much within the past couple of years, whereas it would take other more developed leagues longer to revolutionize, because they maybe have really competitive leagues where their format, they think it works, so they've just kept it for a long time. Whereas we're still learning and we're still developing, so the league has changed to try and make it as competitive as possible, essentially.
So question on that as well, because that was on the Facebook page, I believe, correct? That the live stream was on?
Yep.
So while we're talking, I'll pull a link and pin it here in the chat. Yeah. But that was actually when I discovered your guys' league was that final. So I waited till the very last minute, but I did find you guys. But that was a amazing game for a number of reasons. The quality on the court, of course, number one, between both teams. I think it was it Celtic Belfast you guys played?
Yeah, Belfast Celtic. Yeah, Belfast
Celtic. I'm sorry. And then you had commentators and really professional look on the stream. So it was really enjoyable to watch, and it seemed like the commentators you guys had as well were really in tune with the league and
Mhm.
spoke really well to it. Um, have you gone back and looked back at that, and what do you think about that live stream and how it went, and maybe what the future of that looks like for the league?
Yeah, so this is then touching on one of your questions you said earlier about the changes between when the league first started to where it is now. I was really proud watching that back, because of how much effort Nif had put in, and the chairperson, which is still the chairperson, Laura Devine, had put in to organise it. Ryan Adams as well, who's left Nif now. But those two have put in a lot of effort to make that final a really good product, on the court, but also off the court as well. Having commentators there that wanted to be there, and the commentator was there throughout a couple of playoff games as well. Having the bleachers, which is the stands, pulled out so people could come and spectate the final free of charge as well. So people didn't need to pay to come and watch. They were allowed to come in and just watch. Um, there's a balcony in the venue that we play at as well. So it was packed. You couldn't get in, which was amazing for Northern Irish futsal. Even that exposure of people there maybe passing by in the facility could stand and watch, or come down and sit and watch a game. Maybe they haven't seen futsal being played before, but that would have been their first experience of an intense sport, a high quality sport, all action, loads of drama, end to end goals, tackles, last minute goals. It was chaos, to be fair, and that final epitomised the progress that futsal's made within Northern Ireland, especially within our league. So yeah, watching it back, I did get a chance to watch it back. Believe it or not, it wasn't the best we played all season, but finals are for winning, especially when it's got high importance for our club to. And it was our dream from the start of the season to go back to the Champions League. We'd already been there twice. We wanted to go back for a third time. And yeah, it was a dream come true for us again to be back there, back where we feel we belong, and that's where we want to stay. So yeah, it was amazing watching it back. But I hope that happens more often, to provide the exposure needed for our league.
Neil Allen in the chat, giving you some props as well. He says, Darius, amazing player. Thanks for joining us, Neil. If you have any questions for Darius while he's here, now's the time. Put him on the spot.
He's a dangerous man to ask questions.
Is he really? Oh,
he's a friend of mine. No, I don't know what he's going to ask. I don't
we
know
left
what
the
he's
front
going to
door
ask.
unlocked. All the riffraffs coming in.
Yeah, absolutely. He's certainly one of them. Certainly one of them.
Nathan as well in the chat. Thank you for chiming in, guys, and being here for Darius. If you guys are just jumping in, we're joined by Darius Roohi. He's with champions Belfast Sparta. Neil wants to know who your favorite teammate is, by the way.
My favorite teammate. Well, it's a leading question because he knows who I'm going to say. I've played. It's one of my best mates within the team. I have loads of friends within the team now, and there's people I like within the team off the court as well as on the court. He's trying to lead me to say one player that we're mutually friends with, Jordan Wilson, who is also a fellow international player, very good player. Has played in Champions League with Sparta, twice before. And yeah, he's someone that I would be very friendly with off the court. He's a nightmare for me. He's an organizational nightmare for me. In terms of, because we have that relationship off the court, I need to be. It's hard to find the balance between off the court and on the court, like seriousness. But he knows that I'd be first to praise him, but first to give some constructive criticism towards him, if he needs it. And I wouldn't be afraid to do that to all my teammates as well. I believe we all have a really good relationship on and off the court. And if someone needs to be told something, they'll be told, open and honest. And that's the approach we need to be taking at Sparta, to be honest. No favorites, no clicks. It needs to be open and honest. And I believe we've got that balance well. We've got it right, so far. So
that's awesome. That's a good problem to have. That the camaraderie is so tight that it leaves some room for shenanigans, but everyone knows that when the time comes to clock in and get the job done, that you can count on each other. That's pretty good.
Absolutely. There's loads of examples of that, especially in the last season, where we've become a lot more serious as a club, especially with our training load. We're starting to train. In the past, it was maybe once a week maximum, maybe once every 2 weeks. From last season, we were twice a week, minimum. And then we had preseason friendlies. We had other things going on off the court as well. We got a sponsorship with with Cosmos restaurant within Northern Ireland, and we would always go there once a month as a team. And that off the court aspect you mentioned makes you stronger as a unit on the court. And we believe one of those extras as a player is good incentive to join our club, where yes, we're serious on the court, and we know there's a fine line between having fun and enjoying yourself, but also that line where you cross over and it becomes more serious and competitive. That we all know when that is. Some example, it could be last year in our semi-final first leg. We lost actually our first leg in semi-final 5-4. And it was a massive wake-up call for us, because I think before the game, the training week was really good. There's nothing wrong with the training week, but the actual match day preparation, I felt, wasn't as strong as what we always had. Thankfully, that game was on a Sunday. We lost 5-4, deservedly so. We deserved to lose. It wasn't a game where I'm saying, oh, we were the best team or anything. Yeah, we played okay, but we definitely could have played better, a lot better. We trained on the Monday, the next day. We addressed it straight away. And that whole training week was very, very serious, but also everyone driving each other on. The second leg, we won 8-1. So it just shows you the shift in mentality and the mindset just throughout that whole week. Was a big factor of how we made the final, and an important one, because we needed to win that game. So, or else we wouldn't be having this conversation today, probably. So, yeah, that's just an example of our on the court and off the court sort of behaviors and how that's changed over the past year, definitely.
So I want to ask you one more question about your guys' domestic season before we get into the Champions League. But one thing I need to address before that is a question in the chat from Josh Lowry.
Yeah.
And you alluded to this a little bit earlier today, but how many international goals have you scored?
No, I'm not renowned for my international goal scoring. I've scored two. I've scored 2 international goals in 21 caps. So it's not a great return, especially when you consider my record with my club teams that I've played with. My record at Sparta, I've scored loads of goals at Sparta. It's never been a problem. My year in England, I scored loads of goals in England as well. I finished as the team's top goal scorer with it, so it wasn't a problem there. In Spain, the same. I had a really good goal return in Spain. It seems to be just with our national team that my goal return is really, really low. Some even say that I score more own goals than actual goals as well, which could be true. But no, a main reason for that is the quality so high against these international opposition you're playing against, full-time professionals. And it's difficult at times for us to compete with those, especially being an amateur players. There's nobody in our national team even that is a professional player. So we're learning all the time as players. But what I can say about our national team is the players within that have improved so much, a lot, ever since I made my debut. It was 5 years ago. We have improved so much individually, but also collectively. Our knowledge and our qualities went up massively. And I think if you were to ask all players that have been capped in the past 2-3 years, they'll say the same, which is good. It's positive signs because the product on the court is getting better. It's getting better. What I will say is that when the quality is getting better, I think we deserve to be supported more in terms of more regular sessions together, more contact time together, because then we'll improve even more. So yeah, definitely. My lack of goals is definitely going to be highlighted more and more often. You're going to ask him how many goals he scored, but I know how many he scored. They were both in the same game. So yeah.
I'll wait to see the answer to that in the comments here, guys. So let's see those international counts from you, fellas. Well, like I said, one last question about the league, and then I want to get into the juicy stuff, which is the journey ahead for you and your team.
Yeah.
But I did want to ask one more thing. So like you mentioned, you guys won the treble this last season. Can you talk to me a little bit about what that workload was like and how you guys cope with that, staying inside of the plate competition on top of the regular season that you guys had, having that winning record? Can you talk about that a little bit and what your priority was as you go through training and plan for all these games?
No, absolutely. So if I bring you back 1 year to near enough this time last year, I just returned from England, but with Loughborough, we won the BUCS competition, British University and Colleges Sport competition, which meant if you won that, you got access to the European University Games. So I went away with Loughborough to the European University Games, but I knew after that was me done with Loughborough. We went to Poland and competed, and we got the best ever UK finish with 10th, which was amazing. We brought away, as I said, our team played up with students, so that was the first time we'd ever went. Any team from Loughborough ever went. So to have such a high finish was amazing. But the group we brought away was a special group. After that, I knew I was done with Loughborough because I'd already taken up full-time employment with the Irish FA. So I returned from Loughborough to Northern Ireland, but I hadn't signed with anyone just yet. So I didn't know where it was next for me with futsal within Northern Ireland. And I was speaking with a couple of different clubs at the time. But I met with those from Sparta, and I decided, look, it was time for me to come back to the club to give me the opportunity to play, which I thought was the right thing. But at that time, Sparta were struggling in terms of structure and organization, in terms of the playing squad. The senior playing squad was very limited. I think there was only 3 or 4 registered players at that point. A lot of them had left or had lost love for futsal, so they stopped playing. In terms of the academy as well, after COVID, during COVID it obviously dipped a lot, but after COVID then a lot of players wanted to come back, and we had an influx of players but not enough people to take care of them, essentially. So there's people that wanted to play, but we couldn't facilitate that. So there was a lot of unanswered questions with Sparta at that point, and those that have been at Sparta from the start, Josh Lowry being one of them, he'll know the struggles that we had within the past year. So once I returned, I was the captain before, and then I was granted the captaincy again once I returned. I had serious conversations with those that would be in charge of the club, the chairman, the managers, the coaches, and we come together and we put in a clear plan and a direction of where we wanted to go. And at that point, about 1 year ago, before the league had started, we put in place that we wanted to return to the Champions League. The club didn't win the league the year before, so they didn't get to go to the Champions League, which was disappointing because the club always aims to win the league and to go to the Champions League. It's a dream every year. So that was disappointing, and we said it from the very start. We put our stall out. We weren't hiding it from anyone. We wanted to go to the Champions League, and we put in place things that we thought would help us get there. So one of the things we put in place was, for example, training more regularly. In the previous year before I come back, we weren't training as much. We'd only train maybe once every 2 weeks, and the training numbers were really, really poor. So it was hard to get quality within the session for the coach. Really, really hard. There was a change of coaches as well. We had Gar Smith and Matthew Cross come in. Matthew Cross was the assistant manager to Darius at the time, and Darius had left the club, so Matthew had stepped up, and we also brought in Gar Smith, who was involved with the national team as well, but also with other teams within the league. So that was a coup for us as well. We upped our sessions at that point and signed more and more players to our club, players that we thought could get us to the Champions League, essentially. Accompanied by those that were already within the squad. So those 4 or 5 players, we built on that, signed about 10 players, which was our foundation, and went with it. Started training twice a week and playing the matches at the weekend on a Sunday. And that springboard from last year to now was massive. And if you look at our squad makeup now, I think there's like 7 or 8 international players now playing at our club. Some that have only arrived in January or this summer. But also those like Josh Lowry is in the comment section. He's been at the club since even before me, and he's internationally capped as well. Hasn't scored a lot of goals, may I add as well. The springboard in the past year has been massive, and the development of the club from the state of nearly not being a club to where it is now is astonishing in my opinion, and that is why we went on to win the treble, in my opinion, in terms of those simple organizational changes and that little bit more commitment shown by everyone, not just players and not just staff. It needs to be from everyone, because if one's doing it and someone else isn't doing it, it's not going to work. So everyone's sacrificing for the common goal of getting back to the Champions League and trying to win every single game we play in, league, cup, playoff game, didn't matter. Trying to win all the games. And thankfully, we won more than we lost last year, and that's got us to where we are now. So yeah, I'm very proud of the progress we've made as a club in the past year.
That's incredible. You know, it's I the only thing I can relate it to is what's happening in my backyard in the U.S. and seeing what
Mhm.
COVID did to futsal here.
Mhm.
It felt like there was a bit of a grassroots surge coming. There was excitement about a potential truly professional league, and there's all these things going on and a lot of buzz. And then, of course, COVID came through and wiped everything out. And
Mhm.
the teams that have survived that and the leagues that have survived that are strong, um, by our standard. But it certainly feels like we may have taken those two steps back after taking a step forward in the sport here. It
Mhm.
sounds like you guys kind of felt that same pain.
No, absolutely. We definitely did. We felt the same, not just as Sparta, but also as a league, also as a national team as well. Because as a national team, we didn't play during that whole COVID spell over 2 years. We didn't play a game. We didn't have any access to games. But what I will say is that the players, especially within the national team, because over COVID, I wasn't with Sparta at the time. I was with my club in Spain at the time. So the way that the national team was handled in terms of access to players and things we were trying to do off the court was good, as a player cohort. We come together. We were trying to talk about things more often. We were trying to go on Zoom and talk about things, watch games, because the professional game was still going on. So Champions League games were still going on. We were having meetings with professional coaches, trying to get insight to sport, technical things that we could improve ourselves, but learning from them. So we were trying a lot to do things off the court to make us better on the court when return to play happened. So yeah, it was a big problem over COVID where we didn't have access to the indoor facility. So as soon as that finished, we were all excited to get back on the court. Um, and thankfully, since then, we've grown a lot.
It's incredible. Well, and
Mhm.
speaking of growth and future challenges, let's get into your guys' Champions League challenges that are coming up.
Mhm.
Uh, Before I do, if you guys are in the chat, make sure and drop a like and share this with your friends. We're here with Darius talking about the real juicy topic today, of course, and that's what a week away, right? You guys will be beginning to travel.
Yeah, we travel on the just over a week of the 22nd, to Albania. So
Albania,
Tirana.
that's right.
Yeah, yeah, Tirana. So yeah, we know that it's going to be a super difficult challenge. Any team that we're going to play or we would have faced within the draw was going to be a difficult challenge, regardless. But um, I'm sure we're going to talk about it now. Our preparation has been a lot better than what it has done in the previous years, even if you compare our preparation to other teams, and they won't mind me saying it as well because they know how hard we work. It has been amazing this 5 6 weeks in terms of things we've done internally on the court, with our training sessions per week, but also the friendlies we've had an opportunity to play against. Some really good teams that are also going to the Champions League. I mentioned PYS Saltires, Scottish champions. We've had a chance to play against them, and Blue Magic Dublin, who are also going to the Champions League, amazing team. We've had a chance to play against them. We also had a chance to play against Pro Brazil, another team from the Republic of Ireland, that are strong. So we've had 3 good tests that have helped us prepare. Um, and we thank those 3 teams for helping us prepare as well. They needed the preparation for their season and their Champions League campaign as well. So I'm glad that, as you say, the community's coming together and trying to help each other grow and help each other prepare. So yeah, that was a real positive for us, being able to play against good opposition, because that's what it's going to be in Europe.
Absolutely. I saw you guys post about that. I can't remember where I saw it, but I saw it on social media and thought that was really
Mhm.
impressive that all these qualified teams are coming together within the UK and finding a
Mhm.
way to stay sharp. Um, Tell me a little bit about the travel portion of this. Now you've had experience in Champions League before, so maybe this
Mhm.
doesn't impact you the same, but from your perspective as well as the teams, how does that add an additional factor to this play? Not only the skill level going up, but then the additional travel and other
Mhm.
constraints on the team.
No, absolutely. The team that won our league last year, Belfast United, they also coincidentally they've had to draw. They were drawn against the same opposition we were drawn against, the host nation Tirana. Um, so after liaising with them about travel and how they managed it, we knew it was going to be difficult in terms of mileage covered. We have to take 2 flights to get out to Tirana. It's going to take us 7 8 hours to get there, but also 2 flights on the way back. On the way back, we have a long layover, but that was That was the best we could do in terms of availability of seats on airlines, but also financial constraints that we have as a club. As I said, we're an amateur club, so we rely on UEFA grants. If you win the league, you get a grant from UEFA, which goes towards your travel. But it wasn't enough to cover our travel, so we needed to put our heads together as a club on how we would raise funds as a club. We had a prize giveaway, which generated some income for the club that went towards that. You have to also factor in that we were training over the pre-season, so we had that cost. We had sponsors come in for our new jerseys that are going to be released very, very soon. So people have been very, very supportive in terms of helping us fulfill our dream of going to the Champions League. Without the sponsors and without people in supporting our club financially, we wouldn't be in a strong position right now to go to the Champions League financially. It would be impossible. So I'm really, really glad that we've got that support. The distance is long to get there to Tirana. There's no direct route from Belfast. That's why we had to connect. But players that have played with a national team and have played with Sparta before in European competitions, or maybe at other clubs in European competitions, but have signed for Sparta now, will know that it'll be mentally draining to try and travel so far to play a European competition. But if you can't get up for a European Champions League game, then I don't know what'll get you excited to play a game of futsal. So I believe that yes, it'll be long to get there, but we're not going to use that as an excuse to get there. I'm certainly not anyway, and I wouldn't expect the other players or people involved in the campaign to use that as an excuse. So we recognise that it'll be difficult off the court to get there, but on the court it'll also be difficult. So we have to be ready for that, and I think we will be.
Talk about that mental piece a little bit more. I find that very interesting. So not only the jet lag or whatever you want to call it, everything else, but obviously a much bigger stage, an unfamiliar place. What kind of state are you in mentally before a game like that, and how do you keep your cool?
No, even players, the top players, might even admit that they get a little bit nervous every time that they step onto the court to play against good opposition, whether that be in their local leagues or whether that be in the European competitions that they play in. For us as amateur players as well, the best sort of experiences we get is going away to these European competitions and also playing with our national team if you're lucky to do that. So playing in our league is completely different to playing in the European stage in terms of facilities, which is a big one I'm sure we'll touch on later. Facilities within Northern Ireland, they're nowhere near what it'll be like when we go to Tirana. In terms of professionalism of your opposition is night and day in terms of what we play in Northern Ireland as well, but also how we have to prepare as a team. That'll be upped as well for a lot of our players. It won't be the first time that they've been away to the Champions League, but for some it will be. So for that week or 5 days, 6 days that we're away for, they'll have a really, really positive experience of professionalism and the learning that takes place there. We hope that everyone, not just those that haven't been there or have been there, everyone involved in that campaign will bring that back, not only to our club, but to the league and to set a new standard. Because if one team's setting a new standard, everyone else needs to improve to get to that standard as well. And that'll grow the league on the court. Then it's up to those off the court to then grow with the clubs. So yes, people will be nervous. People will be excited. Personally, I'm really, really excited every time I step onto the court, especially in a really, really high quality game, because we're lucky. We're lucky as players. A lot of our players are young as well, as young players, to get opportunities like this, still young. Also paving the way for the future to come in. Every time we step onto the court as a Northern Irish futsal team playing in the Champions League, this exposure, and we have an opportunity to make history. No team in Northern Ireland futsal history, in a short history, has ever picked up a point in Europe. So every club is going away every year, no matter if it's Sparta or someone else, to try and make history. So that's exciting to me. That's really, really exciting. And mentally, I'm confident in the players around me that we can go and get results in any game we play. So I know my opponents, my teammates will feel the same in terms of their confidence, because we prepared hard. We've practiced a lot in pre-season, so we're not going over there unprepared. We're prepared to the best of our constraints as such. So yeah, I'm really excited. I'm confident in us.
That's exciting. So
Mhm.
let's talk about your guys' competition. I'm not gonna name them all by name because I have a hard enough time speaking English, but you
Yeah,
guys will be traveling to Albania, which will be
yeah,
the host for the entire group stage for the
yeah,
preliminary round.
yeah,
You'll face three teams, one
yeah,
each team once. Um, Tirana is the host,
yeah,
and they are champions from Albania, I believe.
yeah. Correct,
And then you'll be facing the champions from Bosnia as well.
correct. Radnik, they're called.
Radnik, okay, Rodnik,
Yeah.
okay. And then you have maybe somewhat familiar foes in a Welsh opponent as well, correct?
Mhm. Well, controversial, and a lot of people in the futsal community, the the UK futsal community will know this. Um, the Welsh team are no longer competing in the European competition anymore. So we're actually playing in a group of three. The only one in the tournament that is competing in a group of three. Now that was liaised to us back last week, the back end of last week,
Oh,
but we knew that that was coming due to social media from the team that we were supposed to play for Wales called Druids. There seems to be a lot of complications with that club at the minute in terms of their football association and their club, and also linking that to UEFA. There seems to be complications there that are out of our control. We've done everything we possibly can to compete in that tournament, but we don't know what's going on at other clubs because we can only focus on ourselves. So all we know is that they're no longer competing. So we're playing in a group of three. Now, how that affects the other groups that we're playing in, we don't quite know yet because all the other groups that we're playing in are groups of four. And how that works is the team that finishes top of all those groups immediately progress, but the team that finishes second, best second out of all the groups, also progresses. So that obviously affects how that's going to work because of our group right now is a group of three. So I don't know the protocol for if a team isn't competing anymore. We've asked for some more clarity on that situation, but we're going to hear soon. So yeah, a very interesting situation. But yes, we are still definitely playing against Tirana and Radnik, which will be two very tough opponents, Bosnian champions and Albanian champions. We have a lot of footage on them. We've watched them play. Radnik were playing live last night against another. Talking about teams that are playing Champions League, they were playing against a friendly against another team from another group as a friendly. So good preparation from them, I will say. Yeah, we've seen games of them and they're strong. No denying they're strong. But as I said before in the previous question, we need to believe in ourselves and our game plan, our strategy, how we're going to combat how they play, but also how we can implement our game to impose on the opposition to try and win the game. That's my mentality going into it. And that's the mindset I've been trying to portray onto my teammates in the club is that we need to believe that we're going to win games or to go and get points, results. Because if you don't believe that, then there's no point even going. So yeah, they're strong, but yeah, we need to compete against them. We need to.
it's this is a little off topic, I guess, but I actually did a video on what was going on in Wales earlier in the year because
Mhm.
their FA had pulled their U19 out of the Euro
Yeah,
competition recently as well,
yeah.
hadn't they?
Yes, they have. Talking about under 19s, like that's a stage that I would love to get to with Northern Ireland, and that's the reason why I started playing futsal. It was an opportunity to play under 19s futsal at a really high level, international level, and that hasn't happened yet, and I would really love to see that happen in the near future. Um, I just went straight into senior team, thrown into the deep end, as you said before. But I think it's an important platform to have younger players provided with international experience before they get to the senior level, so that they're better prepared. So maybe that you're talking about mentality going to the Champions League. So players are better prepared from a younger age, maybe 16, 17, 18 year olds playing at a really high level. So when they turn 18, 19, 20, and they do eventually step up into the senior team or to get to go to European competitions, they're not overawed by the experience, and they're not flabbergasted by maybe big crowds or big venues or the professionalism because they've already seen it for 4 or 5 years. So it's nothing new. And I suppose the Welsh FA pull in their under-19s team, it takes away all of that I've just said, all the benefits of that in terms of futsal within their country, which is really disappointing because um, there's a long list of benefits for young players playing futsal, not only recreationally but competitively as well. Futsal's more than just a competitive sport. You can play for fun. You can do it for personal development in terms of um, social development, cognitive development, emotional development of a young person, not just a player that wants to play just for fun. So to have that, younger bracket taken away, the competitive side, is disappointing from my view, being from Northern Ireland.
Well, and I'm going on a little bit of a tangent here, and I promise we'll come back to Champions League, but I do want to ask you while we're on the topic, the landscape of futsal, international futsal in the UK is kind of all over the board. You have stock
Mhm.
rising with a country like England, who's just brought back their U19 and talking
Mhm.
about a women's team as well. And
Yeah.
then you see, on the other side, a Welsh side that's making cuts. As someone that's looking at your own FA and
Mhm.
maybe even having some conversations based on your career,
Mhm.
where do you see the future of that going? And is there concern with issues like what we're seeing out of the Welsh FA in the futsal community in Northern Ireland, or are you looking at the positives from a country like England and saying we could do that too?
No, no, we need to be looking at the positives, definitely. I haven't had any indications, obviously working internally at the Irish FA, that the futsal's in trouble. If it was in trouble, I would be very disappointed, and maybe wouldn't be speaking here today. I would be crying, but yes, as you said, the model of England where their senior team was pulled away during COVID was disappointed because they have talented players that play in the National Futsal Series in England, which was on, as I said, BT Sport and was live streamed every weekend. If you watch the games, they're high level games, they're good games. As I said, amateur players as well, really, really good quality for being amateur players. So it's a dream for us for our league to get to that sort of standard on the court. But as I said, before, like as a senior team, we wouldn't. If the national team was pulled away from us, we would be heartbroken, to be honest. We don't want to see it going down that route. We want to see the positives and the growth there. As I said before as well about the under-19s from England, that's really really good. Really positive and positive steps forwards. But we want to go that way as well as our national team, to have younger players playing our game, so that hopefully in 10, 15 years time, whenever I'm coming to a close within my futsal career, that there's a platform for those players to play under 19 and hopefully younger, at a really, really competitive level, playing locally, but also on the European stage and the world stage. Then they're not overawed, as I said, by experiences when they step up in the senior in their international futsal. Um, so yes, the positives we need to be looking at in terms of progressive on the court and off the court, and starting with an under 19s team or youth leagues that I'm sure we'll touch on at some point as well, would be a really, really positive step forward.
I like that a lot. It's and as following American leagues and the U.S. team, we've had our own trials and tribulations this year, and even through that, I've always said, as a futsal community, we have to somewhat control our own destiny. We can't sit around and wait for an FA to suddenly decide that we're worth investing in. I think if we prove we are and bring people to the sport, show them the crowds like what was at your guys' league final, uh,
Mhm.
people will see that there's some interest there, and eyeballs talk. That translates to marketing money and
Mhm.
sponsorships, and
Mhm.
and the next thing you know, it's all right there.
Mhm.
Um, so it's difficult to say, especially for me, seeing a setback here in the U.S. recently. But even then, it's like, hey, we got to charge forward. It's time to let that problem roll off our back and take on the next big challenge and
Mhm.
prove for the next generation that this is worth investing in, and there's a home for you in futsal.
No,
Um,
absolutely. As you said about the market in there, that's super important, especially with the younger generation coming through with social media. How you market your club and how the sport looks in your country is important. Now, it isn't about always how it looks; it is about how it is on the court. And I'm a firm believer in that. A lot of people will say the same. People can glamorize things that really isn't the truth. You want the truth as well. You want how it actually is in the court, but you want how it is to be marketed really well, because we play a really, really amazing sport. Futsal's high octane, end to end goals, tackles, last minute, play, roll on, roll off, high intensity. There's so many things to be excited about when you're watching a futsal game. Now I've got family and friends that have never played futsal before, but they would have tuned into the BT Sport games, or they would have come to watch our final live just because they wanted to, and they had no interest in it before. But that's opening their minds to how progressive futsal could be. Not even for them to play, because obviously some of them are way too old to pick up the sport as a competitive. But why not recreationally, or why not bring younger kids along to watch those sort of games? And then after they've watched it, then it's up to us to provide those kids with opportunities. As I said, with these leagues could be a solution to that. Within Sparta, we've got that, but not all the teams have that. So if you had, for example, a 7-year-old that came to watch the final with their parents just as they were passing by in our facility, oh, I really, really enjoyed that. That was really good. I like the intensity. I like the way there were so many goals. It was entertaining. How can I play that? Then there needs to be a solution, a clear pathway for them to step in, recreationally maybe, but maybe competitively as well, just depending on their needs as a player. But without those opportunities, not possible. So how that's marketed from the very offset and the opportunities provided is really, really important. Something we need to address going forward as a futsal community within Northern Ireland.
I like that a lot. One question for you here. Speaking of that, and getting it out to eyeballs, is there a way for us to follow your guys' games while you're in Albania? Will there be any live streams that we can follow, or anything you can recommend to the viewers today?
Yes, there should be a live stream. Tirana live streamed it last year, for Belfast United's game, so there will be exactly the same platform, I would imagine. So yes, whenever it's close to the time of the games, they'll put out links to the games. It'll probably be on YouTube, and we'll then share them on our social media, Sparta Belfast Futsal Club on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. So they're easily accessible at that point. So yeah, as I said, in the league season as well, we were live streaming all our games, trying our best to be progressive. So we want to continue doing that. I don't think we'll personally be live streaming in Albania. I'm not sure about that one yet, but the host definitely will be, and it's a lot more professional. As I said about that professionalism, it's a lot more professional than how we would have done it. So yeah, learning from them.
So along those lines, you talked about the professionalism of the other two teams involved in the group. What are your guys' expectations, and what's your personal expectation? I know you mentioned that there's that goal of getting those first points for a Northern Ireland club. What else is on your mind as you stare down the calendar at this contest coming up?
No, absolutely. Mentality is important for competitions like these. So personally, I'm going over to try and win all the games that we play. Whoever we play at any point, I'm going to win the game, mentally. That means giving my 100% in terms of the preparation leading up to the game, but also during the game and after the game as well. So I'm not naive enough to think that we will win all the games that we ever play in, and that's the truth, because we have lost games that I've played in loads in the past anyway. So I know it could happen, but I go with the mentality, and the team seem to be sharing that mentality where we're going to try and win all the games that we play. In terms of preparation that we've done with training, analysis, matches, then we'll see what that looks like on the court, but then off the court as well. And this mentions the professionalism that we're going to have to encounter. The recovery is going to be super important. The nutrition is going to be super important when we're away. So having a clear understanding of what we need to do, understanding our bodies, on how we're going to recover and go again, because the games are going to come thick and fast over there. We arrive on the 22nd. We'll play 23rd. We'll play 24th as well. So 2 games in 2 days is going to be really, really difficult. And those that haven't played for the national team, or haven't played in European competition before, that's probably going to be the first time they're having to play 2 games in 2 days. So it'll be new for them, of course, yeah. And it's not every day that you have to do that anyway. So that'll be completely new experience, on how they get to manage their bodies, because it's going to be long games, and physically demanding games. So how we learn from that off the court as well, and also in the analysis after each game as well. That's constant learning for us. And as I said, that won't stop then after we get home then. How can we improve upon that if we were to go again next year? or our league campaign, how are we going to take the learning from Europe and embed that within how we're going to play within the league to hopefully go again next year. It can't be just an experience to go away and put the feet up. I hate that where you go away and it's treated like a holiday. It has to be treated seriously and competitive, and our players understand that really, really well. So I've got no doubt that we're going to go away with a mentality to try and win the games, and a really strong mentality, and to learn as much as possible, because we're all still learning as well.
I love that mentality that you bring to it, and it sounds like your team shares. I mean, I think too, when you're coming to it as like you mentioned, coming from an amateur league, maybe versus some professional or semi-professional leagues in this preliminary round, you see a really big gap in where countries are with their leagues and maybe how they handle things. And it sounds like you guys are ready to take on business and not just snap some photos of the Albanian countryside.
No, absolutely not. Even though we understand that countries that we're playing against, they're really far along in terms of their futsal journeys, and how much they're supported by maybe football associations, or how much futsal is actually embedded within their culture, because that's important as well. If you look at countries such as Brazil, Spain, Portugal, but also up and coming nations that have done really well recently, Finland being one positive example of how seriously they're beginning to take it. Germany could be another example in terms of the professionalism in their senior league, of how seriously they're taking it in terms of the Bundesliga. So we will face teams with different mentalities towards futsal, but that can't affect how we prepare as a team, because we take it seriously, even though our leagues still new, relatively new, and a lot of people are still learning, and myself included. We have to go with the best we possibly can. We have to, and we can't be treating it like another just experience. We have to go with a mentality that we're going to win. Yes, we want the experience as well, but it can't be all we're there for. We have to go trying with the aim to at least win all the games, and I think we will, and I really think we will.
I love it. And for those that are maybe new to Champions League, maybe my American viewers aren't quite as in tune with it, but this preliminary round is just the first step after qualifying. And like Darius mentioned earlier, there's only a select few out of these groups that get to move on to a main round of competition, at which point, I mean, the level really ratchets up. But even so, in this preliminary round, folks like you guys, situations like what you mentioned with coming out of countries like Wales that may be struggling, but then also someone who's recently made news in futsal is a team like Riga out of Latvia that's suddenly got a huge mass of superstars like Ricardinho, Serginho from Anderlecht.
Yeah.
I mean, talk about trying to put a finger and understand this part of the contest may be difficult for some people because there's so many extremes going on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. You can see the development of teams like Riga over the past year. Even if you're looking at the development of Sparta, and then you look at the development of that club, it's amazing what can be done in a short space of time in terms of their marketing, but also in terms of their long-term vision and their project. This isn't just in terms of Riga, because I've got some insight from a couple of people that are involved within the professional game, and I was asking the same question as you, like, how is this happening so quickly, and how are they attracting these big stars? And the simple answer was that the players are interested in the development and their project. It's long term, it's forward thinking, and that's exciting for them from their perspective. They're also playing in a really, really strong group as well, which is also interesting, because they're not guaranteed passage to the next round. So that's their first hurdle as a club that is now under the spotlight. Certainly with Ricardinho playing for them now. They're now active, really, really active on their social media with posts and the amount of their training, which is amazing for them. But yeah, interesting task ahead for them. But I think that's one to keep tabs on for the short term and long term, in terms of their development as a project. Because I think that could be really, really serious in the next few years.
One more question that I have for you, considering Europe and its growth in futsal, is another recent, I guess, buzz that we saw in the futsal circles was coming out of Croatia with a team like Dinamo, and how they've had this grassroots growth to their fan base that's turned into packed arenas. For someone like you that has a very unique touch point within the futsal community, not only at your FA level but at a domestic level, Is that something you guys are talking about and figuring out how to replicate? Because I see that and I kind of imagine it in arenas everywhere.
Yeah, no, in terms of where they are, where we are, night and day in terms of how far along they are, but it's definitely been talked about in terms of players within my club that have come to me and said, "Have you seen that live stream of them playing? Like, it's amazing. Like, how could they even hear themselves when they're trying to communicate on the court? They probably can't even hear what they're saying." Um, but in terms of the market and the exposure for European futsal, Croatia are a good model of that in terms of their development, their serious development. I said about Finland and Germany, Croatia could go into that bracket as well in terms of their seriousness. As a national team, they're super strong as well. But that comes from years of laying foundations, homegrown players, development of coaches, development of facilities, development of clubs, not just bringing in the best players, the best foreign imports maybe from across the world and trying to gain quick success. Because that's maybe not the right way to go about it. If you look at other clubs and their rise and fall very quickly, they want long term success. And in Croatia, I think it's big positive strides in terms of could we get there? Absolutely. But what an important thing that they have that we don't have in Northern Ireland is a purpose built facility. We don't have one facility that is up to UEFA or FIFA regulations in terms of the size of the court, in terms of the actual facility itself to host international tournaments. So, for example, if we, as Sparta Belfast, qualify for the Champions League, we can't host it ever. Not even that we wouldn't want to, because I'm sure we would, but we don't have anywhere in Northern Ireland that could host a tournament like that, which is a shame because we would want that, but it's just not possible. In terms of how the league would thrive from that, I believe that it's so important to have a facility there for people to come and watch, for young players to play in, for the league to play in. Now, it doesn't need to be in the next year we need to build 5 facilities across country. It doesn't need to go like that. It could just start with one purpose-built facility. There was a lot of examples in coach education courses across Northern Ireland for futsal. There's a coach educator, Kieran Donaghy, that talks about the Belfast Giants, who are a hockey team, ice hockey team within Northern Ireland, and they play within the Odyssey Arena, which is their home venue with thousands of seats on an ice hockey rink, of course, but also within that facility, there's loads of restaurants, there's a cinema, there's arcades, it's got everything. Um, and if you look back, he said about it 20 years ago, and you'd have said then to people within Northern Ireland that ice hockey would be such a big thing within our country, people would say, no, it won't, it's impossible. But now that there's a purpose-built facility, people would go to watch the Belfast Giants. I know I've been loads, and I've got not much interest in ice hockey, but I've been because of the family nature. It's a family event. The way it's marketed online, the quality which you're going to watch within high-level sport. Um, it's a really good event to go to. Now, what's to say futsal can't go down that route as well in terms of the facility, in terms of making it a family event within how it's marketed? Why can't it go down that route? We've also seen recently the growth of women's football within Northern Ireland. They qualified for the Euros within the past year, and obviously working within the FA, I've seen how that's impacted what we do on a daily basis between women and girls football. Why can't futsal go down that route in terms of the promotion, the marketing, the exposure, the getting more people involved? As I said, you can't see it, you can't be it. So you've got international players from the women's team going out every week to meet players, to take sessions. Why can't we go down that route within our country? And that's the sort of route I would like to see us go down. Now, if you're looking at futsal in the next 20 years, let's say now, futsal won't be big, but if there was maybe a facility there and the exposure to go and do things within the community and to make futsal not just about the competitive edge, but also a family event that you could go to on a Saturday or Sunday or Friday night to go and watch such an entertaining sport, then who knows? Maybe it'll take off. But yeah, I think that's the direction we need to go to. We need to look internally at how other sports have grown and sports that wouldn't be considered big within Northern Ireland, and try and grow them internally. It's good. It's easy for us to say, "Oh, look at Croatia and Dinamo and the amazing crowds and the facilities they got," but they're way along the journey that they started a long time before us. So if we just looked internally, it's so simple for us to try and grow. So yeah, I really hope we go down that route first.
So this kind of goes into my it's kind of my keystone question every interview, and that is well, I guess I should preface this by saying this is the first time I've interviewed someone that's involved with their FA, so I don't want to get you in trouble either. But uh, but my question is, I kind of call it fantasy booking, almost like
Yeah.
when Americans do fantasy football or things like this. But if you had the keys to the castle, you were making the decisions for futsal in Northern Ireland, whether it be the league or as a whole.
Mhm.
What is the very first thing you're doing to grow the sport? Are there changes that you would make immediately? What would you do that you think would have the most impact to improve the health of the sport in Northern Ireland?
Well, a lot of money. No, I'm only joking. Just provide a lot of money. It's an easy way. No, I'm only joking. In terms of understanding the constraints that we have within Northern Ireland financially and physically at the moment, where it's still growing, there's still a lot of people that aren't involved within futsal. There's still a very small group of people that are driving futsal forward, even though it has grown from the very start, of course. As I mentioned there in the previous question, I think a facility is imperative. Um, just start off with one facility where it's purpose built and it's correct, the correct markings for futsal in terms of size. You can incorporate, you could partner with other sports within Northern Ireland, but futsal would have its place within that facility. Um, the whole league could play out of there, for example. You wouldn't have to have it where just one team, for example, it's the Sparta Belfast Arena. No, it doesn't need to be that way. It could just be the National Indoor Futsal Arena in Northern Ireland. It can be anywhere, but all the teams in that league get to go and play quality futsal there in terms of on the court, where it's real. That also has an effect for teams going to Europe as well because they'll not be overawed by the court size or the different dimensions or because that's a reality that we need to face as well when we go away, that it'll be one of the only times we get to play in an official court. Something so small. If you haven't played with the national team or played in previous Champions League, that might be the first time you've played on an official size court, um, where where it's a proper game of futsal. In Northern Ireland, if we had that facility, that wouldn't be the case already. Teams would be better equipped immediately to go away. Having that facility where everyone can play out of, so it could be not only Sparta, the whole league, but also the youth, which I think is really, really important. Um, Touching on the youth, I think there needs to be, as I said in the interview as well, more exposure done with the younger levels. If we start integrating it within kids of primary school age, whether 4, 5, and 6, as like a fundamental, not where you're coming in, you're playing, competitive futsal, but can you integrate these kids into a fun futsal environment where they're playing just recreationally and develop it? Spain have this sort of model as well, where when they start playing football as such, they start playing futsal at a young age because it makes more logical sense where they're playing on a court where they've got less players. They can get more touches of the ball. They can make decisions. They can work as a team. They can have fun. They're not being professionally coached from first hand seeing it in my placement. They're just being provided with the tools to play, and they're just off you go. If they win, they win. If they don't, so what? We'll come again next week and they'll play again. But that culture, embedding it within your culture is important from the ground up. So starting within primary school age, then the next stage, can you go to secondary school age? Embed it within secondary schools, high schools, then maybe universities as well. Because at the moment we don't really have a link between all of them yet. So for me, I think that's important. Then also then touching on to the clubs. So you might have someone that starts playing in primary school. Then when they go to their secondary school, they could continue playing. Then when they go to university, they could continue playing as well. But then after they finish university, or even while they're in university, they could be linked in with one of their clubs. Then it's up to the clubs, which I think is a fantasy as well, to have their own youth sort of structure in place like Sparta. It doesn't need to be for all age groups. It can be like 2 age groups at a time. So you could have like 5, 6s, and maybe 7-year-olds playing together, 8, 9, and 10-year-olds playing together, 11, 12, 13-year-olds playing together. Doesn't need to be initially where you've got one age group for all the teams. It could be something so simple where you're combining ages. Could be to increase your participation numbers as well. If you were to do it where it's, okay, only 7-year-olds in this session, you might have a low number in the session just because futsal within Northern Ireland isn't there yet in terms of exposure. But if you were to combine those ages, and that's what we've done at Sparta, combine different ages to play in a session, there will be enough to have a good session. then those kids can play recreationally or competitively as well. They can play matches or they can just train for fun, offer it to the kids. But yes, in terms of my fantasy, having a facility, having a pathway in place, and having clubs that are currently there within Northern Ireland doing more for the youth, they would be three really, really important things. And I know that clubs have financial constraints, but that's the way I see the sport going. With the now, that combines the now and the youth. I think that we need to go down those avenues that I mentioned.
Yeah, it seems like I mentioned, I try to ask everyone that's on. That's kind of my cheap question that I can keep consistent, but I'm always curious to hear what people hear, and so much of it comes back to the youth. A lot of the folks we've interviewed with as well are coming from countries in similar situations as yours, where finances are of course always a factor. Um, and and it seems like everyone kind of says the same thing: take care of the kids, get them to fall in love with this thing, like we have,
Mhm.
and the sport will have a healthy future.
Mhm.
And I thought it was interesting what you said about the facilities too, because I see it here where our amateur teams have a hard time finding a facility that can fit a true futsal court, and it's
Mhm.
created some debate between leagues on what's most important. Is it playing on a FIFA regulated size court? Is it other things? Is it the finance bit? Is it the
Mhm.
structure of the league? All these things are a factor. But it's always interesting to hear other people's takes from across the country on, or excuse me, across the globe, uh,
Mhm.
on what could impact the sport as a whole, and kind of raise everyone up. And I think youth is a big part of that. And I
Yeah.
liked what you said about the facilities. I I'm not bragging, but I listened to the Futsal podcast, and I liked
Mhm.
what Henrique and Vitor said about in England, when you get this BT deal and you're on live TV or you're on your live stream on YouTube, and there's 8 different colored lines. If
Yeah.
you're brand new to futsal and you turn that on, you're like, am I having a bad trip or am I watching a sport?
Yeah.
What is this?
Aesthetically, it's not pleasing, is it? Aesthetically, it's not pleasing. No,
Not at
it's not.
all. Makes
No.
it difficult.
Yeah.
But again, I guess it comes back to money. Who's going to pay for that facility that's just for us?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's yeah. It's the golden question, isn't it? It would be easy for me to say, okay, just give us more money and we'll do better. There's been examples in the past where FAs have provided a lot of funding for futsal or for other sports, and it hasn't worked out for one reason or another. So we need to be, if we were to have these sort of dreams, we need to be smart in what we're doing and to make it sustainable for the future. If you look at Northern Ireland, I'm looking outside right now, it's pouring down with rain and it's supposed to be the summer. Northern Ireland always has rain. So it leads on to my thoughts that why can't we have more indoor facilities where kids that maybe play football, which is one of our main sports within Northern Ireland, within the winter where their pitches are waterlogged and they can't play on them, or it's pouring down outside and you've got a 6-year-old standing outside wearing a big jacket trying not to get pneumonia, like trying to bring them inside. Can we bring them inside to play futsal where they're still playing a flexible format of football within its own regard, futsal, but giving them exposure to something completely different, and who knows, maybe they'll fall in love with that. Or maybe if we have this pathway that I talked about, if the coach from a football team says, you know what, for the season, we're going to do one night a week futsal and one night a week football. And if you enjoy futsal, then great, we'll continue. If you don't, then fine, we'll just play football instead. But if they can't see it, they can't be it. They don't. If they don't even have the exposure, they don't even have the opportunity. Then it's a waste of time even having the conversation because they haven't even tried it before. And at the stage Northern Ireland's at right now, you're seeing players step onto the court for the first time when they're 20 or 30, older. But within Sparta, we've had players that have played within our youth program, and I'm proud to say this from other coaches that have been involved within our youth program. Players that have stepped in when they're 7 or 6, and they're now 11 or 12, and they've had loads of court time already, which is a proud thing for me to say because they've had the opportunity, whether it's by me or other coaches that have been there to help them. But we need more of that. It's all good saying it's happening within Sparta, but we're only a small portion of the futsal community. If everyone else does it as well, we're going to be in a good place. But again, facilities, we need more. It's raining outside. Let's get the kids inside and let's play futsal.
Absolutely. I do have one more curious question, and we'll wrap things up because I've taken up way too much of your time. But
It's okay.
I want to ask you, especially from your perspective,
Mhm.
with having that FA involvement. We've touched on it a few times, but interesting time in the calendar as we've just recently seen the Men's World Cup. We're currently
Yep.
watching the Women's World Cup. Are you guys seeing any kind of increase in interest? I know typically, at least in the United States, there tends to be a bit of a surge in interest in youth in soccer or football uh, in those World Cup years.
Mhm.
Does that translate to the futsal side? Are you guys seeing that at all, or do you see those similar trends?
Well, within futsal, I would be lying if I said that was the case because within the Sparta youth program, within the summer months, we tend to take a break, especially if the team's qualified for the Champions League. So we focus on the senior team a bit more. And due to the lack of people, as I've said, people involved within futsal, the people that are involved with the senior team are genuinely the people that are involved with the youth program as well. So we can't be in two places at once, essentially, and that's obviously to the suffering of the youth program, but that's the best we can do. In terms of if you're looking at football, which you've seen the Women's World Cup, working at the FA, we run summer camps for the kids, and they're always sold out in terms of participation. And as I said, with women's football as well, the growth has been massive over the past year, from when the women have qualified. But what I will say is it shouldn't have taken the women to qualify for a major tournament for that to happen. Um, it did happen, but it shouldn't have taken that to start a chain of events. I don't think that was the only factor to start a chain of events, but it was a big factor in terms of getting more kids involved, young girls involved in football. But that's exciting for futsal because futsal is for anyone. And within our program, we've got young girls playing within it already that play with the boys. That's completely fine. We're inclusive; anyone can play. Um, and we do it to complement those that want to play football as well. We're not here to say, oh, if you play futsal, that means you can't play for your football team as well. We're going to steal you away, or you have to decide. That's nonsense. We're here to complement, and we're here to work with football teams as well. Um, and I think they.
Of fear that, oh, if I let my kids go play for this futsal academy, they might not come back. But I think that there's so many studies at this point about
Mhm,
the benefits of being a multi-sport athlete, and futsal and football have this unique relationship where they're
mhm,
different but they're the same.
mhm.
And I think it's a great opportunity for youth and a great opportunity for two sports to work together. So hopefully we see that across the globe, and it improves the quality of both sports for everyone.
Yeah,
That's the end goal.
you can see examples within Spain and Brazil, particularly where the young players are playing futsal constantly. They've had an opportunity to play. Everyone plays it at that age when they're young. Then when as they get older, they go through the formats. So within my experience within Spain, it was futsal, then foot seven, where it's seven aside, then foot nine, then foot 11, and that goes incrementally with age. I would really love to see that format being introduced more and more often in Northern Ireland. Now, I will say that it is happening within Northern Ireland, definitely, especially I can see it with my own eyes within the FA. That is happening. That's really, really positive. But that's happening maybe on an outdoor format. Can we get them indoor where we can change it from one thing to something else? So, can we change it from maybe a football outdoor format to futsal? Just that simple change of terminology. So then when they're older, you say, oh, have you ever played futsal before? Yeah, I have actually when I was younger. So, you know, just the change in the terminology, and the terminology is important at that part where you're connecting what they're doing with their experience. So yeah, so they'll have opportunities to play both. Then when they're old enough to decide, or whenever they want to decide, if they decide, you know what, futsal wasn't for me, I want to play football. Well, they've had opportunities to play both, and it's a conscious decision. Instead of maybe stepping in when they're a bit older, like me, 17, 18, playing futsal for the first time, and then deciding that I love it because I didn't have an opportunity when I was younger. Um, but I'm sure if I was younger, I would have loved it. So yeah, I'm using myself as an example, but I'm speaking on behalf of a lot of people, I'm sure.
Oh, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, I could talk to you about this all day. I don't
Absolutely.
need to take up any more of your time. But before we go, Is there any social media you want to plug if people want to follow you, or is there any closing comments you want to share with our community?
No, absolutely. In terms of Sparta Belfast, you can find us on Instagram, on Facebook, on Twitter, Sparta Belfast Futsal Club. In terms of me, Darius Roohi on Instagram is kind of what I tend to use. I post a lot about futsal. I also I play football as well. But a lot of my social media is taken up by my sport essentially. But yeah, if you wanted to follow our journey in terms of the club social media is where you'll find us mostly. So you'll have a lot of content coming towards the Champions League time. It's happening right now. If you were to tune in to the club accounts on Instagram and Facebook and stuff, and Twitter, you'll see a lot of content coming in. So yeah, it's exciting times in terms of our club, as you said, with the Champions League. And we're trying to grow that side of our club as well, the social media presence, which I think in the past year I said about the changes that have happened has grown massively. One of the big positives to come out of our club in the past year is the social media. Um, definitely, definitely one of the strongest in the UK in terms of the social media, which has helped us massively.
That's awesome. I've added some links in the chat, guys, so keep an eye on that. I have the Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram links for Belfast there, Sparta Belfast there. And then Darius, I just added your Instagram to the chat as well. So hopefully you see a few of our folks in there following you on your journey here to Albania. Um, I want to just say thank you so much for spending this time with us and giving us insight not only to what's going on in Northern Ireland for Sparta Belfast, but your unique visibility to things like the FA and the Champions League coming up. We appreciate your input, and hopefully we see more of you. If you guys in the chat want to continue to see more content like this, we will be doing another interview on Thursday. That will be at 10:30 p.m. British Standard Time with Richard Ward, Bloomsbury. So we'll be talking
Good
about
player.
his path to Champions League as well. So stick around if you guys would like. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss anything like these interviews. We also do some short format videos on things that are going on futsal. And until I hear from you next time, don't forget to play with your soul. All right.